Quite a number of you have seen in previous videos of my collection that I actually grow a number of my cacti and other succulent plants together with decorative rocks and stones, fossils, some minerals, and I grow them on a raised bed, a sort of a display table, a cactus rock garden. And quite a number of you have actually asked in the past, how exactly did you go about making that? And that's what this video is going to be about today. Hi everyone, welcome back to my greenhouse, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joe. In today's video I'd like to share with you some of the process of how I actually went about building my display table, my raised bed rock cactus garden. And unfortunately I don't have any pictures from when I actually constructed the table itself before actually planting the cacti and other plants, but I'm going to explain to you in a couple of sketches how I went about building I'm going to show you how I actually converted two standard greenhouse tables that I bought. And they're tables that are, standard tables, display tables or shelves, and they both came with a plastic tub that was basically the top of the table. There's two types of greenhouse tables that are generally available. You get those with a flat top, so really looking like a standard table, if you like, flat top, and then you can place your pots on that. There are also greenhouse tables available that are fitted with a little tub, if you like, and that allows you to fill with water around the pots that you've got assembled there, and in that way to water your plants without actually showering them from above. And those tables are, I'm not sure what they're called, but they're sort of soaking tables, I'll call them. Anyway, that is the type of table that I was after, because I replaced that plastic tub that was pre-fitted and that the table came with, and I replaced that tub with a acrylic glass lining. So the inside became a new tub, if you like, but it was a tub that was much stronger, and so that tub or trough is basically the basis of the cactus bed. And it was later on, once I had glued it together. Now, after measuring exactly the sides and the base of the trough that I was going to build, I ordered those pieces of acrylic glass, and I chose 8mm thick acrylic glass, and I had those cut. I had those ordered through online stores where you can actually specify exactly the size of the acrylic glass pieces that you need. They will cut it for you and send it to you, but then you've got to glue those pieces together, which I did with a special acrylic glue. There's some really good acrylic glues available, especially those that actually harden with UV light, so daylight. So that's a task that you best do obviously during the daytime when there's UV light coming into your greenhouse. So ideally the sun shining, but it also works without the sun actually shining on a cloudy day. It just takes a little longer for the acrylic glue to harden. So this is the front of the two tables standing side by side, and you can see the aluminium front. So hidden below a couple of rocks that I've added just you know, to hide the front part of the acrylic glass lining. If I actually move over here, and then let me just move that rock aside, and here, you know, you can hopefully see the actual acrylic glass. That's the inside of the table. That's the trough, if you like, that I was talking about 8 millimeters in thickness, and you know, it basically lines the inside of the table trough. One of the interesting things in my greenhouse is that I actually have the glass sitting on the outer rim, if you like, of a quite thick brick wall. That brick wall is almost 30 centimeters, or actually pretty much 30 centimeters wide, so thick, and I've got the glass sitting on the outer rim, so that gives me basically the full width of the wall on the inside still as a shelf, a natural shelf, if you like. And that, of course, was a gap between the actual table, the edge of the table, the back edge of the table, and the start of the glass. So initially I thought, okay, I can probably just put a couple of pots along the that shelf, you know, behind my raised bed. But I then also decided that why not actually incorporate that space into my overall plant bed, the plant rock bed. And so I built a separate trough for that shelf area behind the actual tables, and I decided to build that one out of wood because I couldn't actually get in exactly that size, you know, a aluminium trough or anything like that. So I decided to DIY, you know, build a frame of wood, and I lined that with thick plastic, a thick plastic lining that I basically stapled at the top to the sides of the wooden frame, and I built it in such a way that it actually, you know, was slightly reclining, so slightly higher at the back and slightly lower in the front, ending basically exactly at the height that I was going to have the plants in the main table part of the overall construction. So those are the main components, if you like: the thinner wooden frame shelf behind the front where the main table and the main growing trough has been built. And that one, I'm not sure whether I said that, but those tables are actually made of aluminium, so you know, quite light but also very strong at the same time. So once I had the four sides and the base glued together to a trough, I then also cut two holes for drainage with a special drill. You get these special drills for acrylic glass. And by the way, this is an important bit here. There are two types of acrylic glass. There's a very durable one, and there is a more brittle type. And it's well, if you choose to buy the brittle one, it is a bit cheaper, but it will be very difficult to actually drill through without potentially breaking the glass or that acrylic glass. So you want to be buying the variety of acrylic glass that you can also more easily drill through, and that's what I did. I pre-drilled a little hole about 1.5 inches in diameter, and there was a special plug that I bought in a do-it-yourself store that I could actually place into that hole, and that was the basis for my drainage. So the drainage holes that then would allow excess water to run off basically at the base of the bed. But a little bit more on how exactly I did that in a moment. So first thing to do, get yourself a strong, sturdy table, one that allows you to either embed a trough that you can build yourself, for example out of acrylic glass, gluing that together. Alternatively, you can also buy just a standard greenhouse table where you would then still build a trough potentially out of acrylic glass. You can also have that made out of aluminium or other metals, a bit more expensive, but it's something that has to basically be weatherproof, UV proof, and it has to be quite sturdy. And remember, there's quite a weight, of course, that needs to be supported by this construction, because of course once you're filling that trough, you're going to have all the substrate, the plants, you're going to have the decorations, the rocks, etc. So easily you're going to have 100 kilos or more of weight, and then once you're watering that substrate, additional kilos, of course, that are going to be added. And that means it's got to be sturdy, it's got to be flat, and it's got to be quite durable and resistant against UV light and other weathering. Now once you've got the trough completed, and I actually had 2 tables standing next to each other, so 2 troughs that I built, same size, same depth, and the next thing to do is to basically start layering the inside of the trough with the substrate. The bottom layer I chose to put quite coarse grit, and that really is because I wanted a layer of good drainage for excess water to run off or run through the substrate and be able to collect at the base of the trough and then to run off through those drainage holes that I mentioned earlier. So I placed a layer of grit, and I also on this grit placed a heater cable, and that's because I wanted to have the option. It's a bit difficult to do that later on once you've got the plants in there, so you've got to do it and you've got to decide whether that's something you want or not. In my climate it really makes sense to have a heater cable if I needed it, and so I placed a heater cable on the actual coarse grit, another little layer of coarse grit on the heater cable to separate the coarse grit layer from the actual cactus substrate. So the potting mix, I inserted 1 layer of garden fleece or plant fleece, so a permeable layer of cloth basically that is weatherproof, so a proper garden fleece which you can get in any garden center. And that's a layer that I spread out like a tablecloth to cover in one piece completely that drainage layer of coarse grit. And then I carefully started filling in on top of that garden fleece the actual potting mix, the substrate that I use for my plants, which is almost 100% mineral. So I'm not actually adding more than 10% of organic compound, meaning, you know, a bit of sandy soil. The rest of the components are all basically mineral components. That's my standard cactus and succulent plant mix. For some of the non-cactus succulents, I increase that amount of non-mineral, so the organic soil component, maybe to 20, max 30%. But generally I use my 10% organic, 90% inorganic mineral for all of my plants. Anyway, so I filled the rest of the space in the plant trough now with this potting soil, the potting mix, and that then allowed me to, you know, based on a little bit of thinking around the composition that I'd like to have, the plant groupings, but also some of the decorations and rocks that I was going to place, that allowed me to, you know, with that plan, start planting and bedding, if you like, the decorations onto the actual trough. Once the cacti and other succulent plants had all been planted, and also the various rocks had been put in place as ornamentals, I also then added a final layer, if you like, a topsoil layer of fine rock chips. These are granite chips, and they're sort of a protecting top layer, protecting top soil, if you like. Why? Because the substrate that I use, of course, has quite a high content of pumice, and pumice is quite light. So when you're watering, there is always a little bit of washout, and you know, it tends to float a little bit before it actually really soaks up all the moisture. And so in order to avoid washouts, I added this final layer of rock chips. As I say, I've used granite chips because granite is a quite chemically neutral type of rock that, you know, doesn't dissolve, for instance, as easily as, say, limestone, and is also quite resistant to erosion, for example, through sun and washing or watering, etc. So anyway, granite, you know, I can really recommend that as a topsoil. You could also use basaltic wash, so basaltic chips. That's probably you know, quite similar in effect. And here you can actually see the difference between, here's the actual substrate with quite a bit of pumice, as you saw from the recipe. And that, you know, as I move a little bit further up here, you can see the granite chips added. And so that's with the top layer, and this is without. With regard to selection of plants, I actually quite like combining cacti with other succulent plants, and so I've got, you know, Haworthia limifolia here. I've got small aloes. These are aloes that remain quite small in size, so they don't take over the whole bed immediately. And you know, I've got various types of Haworthias, as I say. Here's one that's actually nicely camouflaged in between the rocks and the top chip layer. And actually something else that you might actually spot here on the left, a really nice, a really cool effect of actually having the plants growing the way I do here is in between. Let me just swing up here and you'll see more of them. In between the coarse gravel or granite chips, you can see, you can just about make out, I hope, the little seedlings. And these little seedlings are actually, you know, they're from seeds germinated from around the mother plant. Here's the mother plant. It's a parodia. This one is a parodia continus. It's a variation Joadi. And it actually has around it, in the protecting gravel chips, it's got all its little seedlings germinated from the seeds that fell off the you know, that came from the flowers and the fruit of this particular mother plant. So quite cool side effect here with the seedlings growing around the mother plant. I love to combine unusually shaped, beautiful non-cacti, so other succulent plants. Again, some Haworthias here, and you know, I think they just make the entire assemblage of plants look so much more interesting. Because I've got shelves, hanging shelves that are located about 70 or 80 centimeters above the actual tables, so the rock cactus bed, this upper shelf, or the shelf above the table, of course, you know, when the sun is standing quite high, it will throw a shadow down onto the table. So in that way, I've got a much sunnier and warmer front part of the display table, and I've got a slightly more shaded and in that way, you know, slightly cooler, protected back part of the whole display table. And that, of course, is fantastic because it allows me to also grow different types of plants that need, you know, hot, sunny locations in front, and those that actually prefer slightly less sun, a bit more shade, and slightly cooler location towards the back. And that's exactly what I've done. So, you know, in that back row, if you like, I've got the more other succulent plants. There's gasterias, there's Haworthias, there's you know, my elephant foot is growing there. There are crassulas, there are aloes, I think I've mentioned. They grow very nicely in that back part of the whole display. And it's plants like that that I can actually grow quite nicely alongside the cacti that are up in front on the bed that get the full sunshine and the full heat. So a number of you will probably also be asking yourself, how do you actually water the plants here in this raised bed? Well, the answer is, of course, from the top. I don't actually soak, you know, from below. I water all of my plants actually using a hose and a fine spray nozzle. I water them all from the top. And you know, here in this bed, I would typically be watering mainly, you know, around the plants. But some of them occasionally also get a nice little shower, you know, like a rain, like they would be getting a rain shower in their natural habitat as well. With regard to amount of water and also frequency of watering, it takes a little bit of time and experimenting, but you know, very quickly you'll find out how long it actually takes to dry out, so the substrate in between waterings, also the best amount of water to be providing. And you know, you can actually regulate yourself whether you're just going to give a little bit of you know, just a light spring rain, so to speak, a bit of a drizzle, or whether you want to really every now and then, which I do, you know, completely soak and drench the plants in this growing bed. They really like that. And you know, of course, you just have to make sure that the substrate again completely dries out before the next time you start watering again. But otherwise, you know, it's not too different to actually growing your plants in individual pots. You do need to experiment a little bit what, you know, grows well, but also, like I say, with regard to the amount and the frequency of watering. But everything else, very, very similar, really. So for me, it was actually finally a dream come true when I moved into my greenhouse that I now have, because I've always been dreaming of having, you know, a sort of a raised bed with a artificial landscape, a cactus and succulent landscape. So a combination of my plants and rocks and minerals and fossils, and that's something which, you know, I've been dreaming of having for a long, long time. And over the past couple of years, I've now been able to realize that dream. And of course, there's still experimenting going on, and you know, one learns as one goes along. That's quite natural, but it's great fun, and I can really recommend this way of growing some of your plants. Right, that sound in the background, that's the big fan in my greenhouse that's just started up, and I guess that's signaling me to finally shut up and bring this video and this chapter to an end. Okay, I hope you found today's video useful. I hope you found it informative. And, you know, if you're actually also thinking of building a display bed, a raised bed, maybe a cactus garden, rock or without rock, display for your cacti and maybe some other succulent plants, then, you know, hopefully there were enough infos and also inspiration, some ideas for you in this video. If you like the video, just give me a like, send me a comment if you'd like to, and if you haven't subscribed so far to the channel, you know, there's a lot more interesting and hopefully useful videos on my channel. Just go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button, and you'll always get automatic notifications. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your time. As always, stay safe. See you very soon again, hopefully. And as always, happy growing.